If I wanted to keep you financially fragile for the next 20 years, I would not need a recession. I would not need a layoff. I would not even need you to be irresponsible. I would just need you to build a life that looked respectable from the outside and had no room for bad luck on the inside. One car payment you call normal. One apartment upgrade you say you earned. One mortgage that only works if bonuses keep coming. One credit card balance you swear is temporary. One insurance deductible you never really studied. One quiet need to look like you belong in a certain income bracket, a certain zip code, a certain class. That is enough. Because financial collapse usually does not arrive looking like chaos. It arrives looking like adulthood. The newer SUV. The cleaner kitchen, the safer neighborhood, the furniture financed at 0%, the polished life, the image of stability. Then one Friday at 5:17 p.m., the check engine light comes on. Your kid spikes a fever. Your boss sends a vague Monday meeting. You open the banking app and half your paycheck is already gone. Gone to rent, the car, the card balance, daycare, insurance, and a stack of monthly obligations that all looked manageable when you signed for them. That is what fragility feels like. Not poverty, not chaos. Fragility. And that is the trap. The middle class usually does not get wiped out because it took too little risk in the market. It gets wiped out because it accepted too much hidden risk in ordinary life and called that normal. So this is not a video about getting rich fast. It is about becoming hard to exploit. These are the 7 rules of financial self-defense. We have been trained to think about money the wrong way. Earn more, invest more, find upside, beat the market. That is the language of offense. It sounds intelligent. It sounds ambitious. It also gets people quietly destroyed because offense does not matter when the structure underneath you is weak. Take 2 households, same city, same age, same take-home pay, $9,000 a month. Household A has modest fixed costs, no revolving debt, 6 months of cash, decent insurance, and automatic investing. Household B has a $980 car payment, a stretched mortgage, $7,500 on a credit card at 25%, and no cash buffer at all. On paper, they make the same money. In reality, one has room to breathe, the other has a polished version of panic. Income is not strength. A large paycheck can hide a weak life structure for years. Then one ugly quarter shows up, and the household that looks successful starts behaving like a trapped animal. And everyone around that household profits from the trap. The bank gets interest. The landlord gets the higher rent. The dealer gets the sale. The card issuer gets the revolving balance. The system is built to keep you just stable enough to keep paying. So the real question is not, how do I look successful? The real question is, how much bad luck can my life absorb before I have to start borrowing? That is why defense comes first. If your structure is weak, returns will not save you. They will only distract you while the leaks get worse. Rule 1. Cash flow is the first border. Not paper wealth, not a fantasy number for age 65. I mean the basic ability to get through a bad month without your finances becoming a threat. Rent, mortgage, utilities, insurance, car payment, childcare, minimum debt payments, groceries. These are not just expenses. They are recurring claims on your future labor. And this is where people lie to themselves. They call it lifestyle inflation because that sounds harmless, almost technical. A lot of the time, it is not inflation. It is imitation. It is class signaling. It is watching what people around you drive, where they live, where they take their kids, and quietly deciding that in order to be taken seriously, you need to look like that too. So when people get a raise, they say they are rewarding themselves. Usually they are doing something less noble. They are upgrading fixed costs and making themselves easier to break. A couple in Dallas had good jobs, good income, a beautiful house, and 2 nice cars. From the outside, they looked like they were winning. Then one bonus got cut, daycare went up, and the roof needed replacing. Within 4 months, they were carrying expenses on cards and drawing from retirement accounts. It took years to rebuild what looked like just one chain of normal decisions. That is the hidden cost. You do not just lose monthly flexibility, you lose recovery time, you lose bargaining power. Sometimes you lose 5 or 10 years of compounding because you built a life that needed every paycheck to arrive on schedule. And again, the system profits when you normalize that. The bank likes the mortgage, the dealer likes the payment, the landlord likes the demand. Everybody gets paid when your fixed costs rise except you. So test your structure honestly. If your income dropped 20% for 6 months, would you be uncomfortable or would you be in trouble? A raise should widen breathing room before it upgrades your lifestyle. Otherwise, you did not improve your life. You just increased the monthly cost of performing success. Rule 2. Debt is a lien on your future autonomy. There is a polite way to talk about debt, and then there is the honest way. The polite way says debt is a tool. The honest way says a lot of consumer debt is a lien on your future autonomy. When you carry a credit card balance at 24, 26, or 29%, you are not just financing a couch, a vacation, or a few bad months. You are paying an obscene fee to a bank for the privilege of consuming your 2028 paycheck today. That is not convenience. That is a lopsided arbitrage trade, and you are on the wrong side of it. The bank is betting that your impulses will be harder to manage than the interest rate. The bank usually wins. This is why the usual advice around debt sounds so weak. Pay it down, be disciplined, attack the balance. Fine, true, but incomplete. The deeper truth is that revolving debt is not just expensive, it changes the ownership structure of your future labor. Before your paycheck arrives, somebody else already has a legal and mathematical claim on it. And that is exactly the kind of customer the system wants. Not bankrupt, not debt-free, just functional enough to keep making minimum payments, stressed enough to keep paying interest, and optimistic enough to believe next month will be different. A balance like that compounds in the dark, while you sleep, while you work. While you tell yourself you will get serious after the holidays, after the raise, after tax season. People do this for years, and by the end, they have not just paid thousands in interest. They have delayed real investing, lost compounding time, and quietly rented out a piece of their future to a lender that never takes a bad deal. So rule 2 is not be better. Rule 2 is stop leasing your future to finance your present. If debt is charging you at that level, it is not something to politely manage. It is a hostile claim that needs to be removed. Rule 3, build a cash buffer before life humiliates you. People laugh at cash until the random Tuesday when the transmission dies, the dog needs surgery, or the company restructures. At that point, cash is no longer lazy. It is the only thing keeping you from selling low or borrowing high. A real emergency fund does 3 things. It keeps you from dumping long-term assets at the wrong time. It keeps you off emergency debt, and it keeps your brain calm enough to make decent decisions while other people are panicking. That third part matters more than people think. Most financial damage is not caused by low intelligence. It is caused by time pressure and shame. The bill is due, the account is thin, the market is down, so people liquidate retirement money, sign brutal financing terms, or dump good assets at trash prices. One ugly year like that can do more than hurt your balance sheet. It can erase the next decade's compounding, not because you were reckless, because you were forced. And people hate building emergency cash for a stupid social reason. You cannot show it off. You cannot post a story that says, I've got 6 months of expenses in treasury bills. It does not signal sophistication. It signals something more useful. It signals that you are harder to pressure. That is exactly why it matters. The person with cash gets time. The person without cash gets sold to. 3 months of bare bones expenses is the floor. 6 months is stronger if your income is uneven, your industry is cyclical, or your household depends mostly on one earner. Keep this money boring. High yield savings, treasury bills, money market funds, not crypto, not hot stocks, not some friend's conviction play. The point is not return. The point is that one bad month does not force you into a bad deal. Rule 4, insure the things that can actually ruin you. Insurance is not there to erase inconvenience. It is there to keep one bad event from detonating your balance sheet. Too many middle-class households run the same foolish trade. They save a few $100s a month on premiums, then carry a six-figure risk they have absolutely no reserve for. They call that being practical. It is not practical. It is naked exposure with good manners. A cracked phone is annoying. A bad health event with a deductible and out-of-pocket maximum you never really understood can drain savings, stop retirement contributions, and push a household onto cards in a matter of months. One major car accident with weak liability coverage can unwind years of progress in a weekend. That is the middle-class insurance trap, saving small, risking enormous, and feeling responsible while doing it. And the reason people do this is simple. Real risk is abstract, boring, and uncomfortable. It forces you to think about illness, lawsuits, disability, and dependency. So instead, people overinsure tiny objects and underinsure catastrophic events, because protecting a laptop feels emotionally easier than confronting the possibility that one medical bill could turn a stable household into a financing case. Again, ask the counterpart question: who wins when you underinsure real risk? The insurer keeps the premiums low enough to close the sale. The hospital still gets paid. The lender still gets paid. The credit card company gets a new revolving customer. Everybody in the chain gets their money. You get the recovery plan. The rule is simple. Self-insure the small stuff. Insure the catastrophic stuff. If an event can force you to borrow, liquidate, or lose years of compounding, it belongs on the insurance side of the ledger. Rule 5. Study the extraction layer, fees, taxes, and terms. This is the quiet place where money disappears, not in one grand mistake, in respectable-looking leaks. A retirement plan stuffed with high-fee funds. A 1% advisory fee that sounds harmless because it is wearing a tie. A mortgage with lousy terms. A credit card, APR you never negotiated. Taxes you overpay because you never learned the rules. Convenient products that are mostly just cost and better packaging. Here's the principle. People do not lose money only from what they buy. They lose money from the structure wrapped around what they buy. A 1% annual fee sounds small until it sits on real money for 30 years. Bad tax placement sounds boring until you realize you gave away years of compounding for no reason. A sloppy contract feels harmless until one clause turns your flexibility into somebody else's revenue stream. And this is not accidental. Confusion is profitable. Products are layered, jargon heavy, and harder to compare than they need to be because people sign faster when they are intimidated or bored. Plenty of workers spend 20 years in employer plans loaded with expensive funds they never consciously chose. By the time they notice, the cost is no longer one bad year. It is a permanent haircut on decades of growth. You do not need to become a tax attorney or a CFA, but you do need to understand taxable versus tax deferred versus tax free. You do need to capture the employer match. You do need to read the fee sheet. You do need to read before you sign. Most products are built on incentives. The side that understands those incentives usually gets to keep more of the money. Rule 6. Never trust your future self with money. One of the most expensive illusions in personal finance is the belief that because you are clear-headed today, you will still be clear-headed later. You won't. Not consistently. Not after a bad week. Not after a promotion. Not after a breakup. Not after travel. Not when your checking account looks flush and every app in your phone is built to make spending frictionless. And the system is built around that inconsistency. One-click checkout, buy now, pay later, minimum payments, auto-renew, subscription creep. The architecture assumes that future you will be tired, distracted, flattered, or emotionally sloppy at least some of the time. And it profits when that turns out to be true. So this rule is not about discipline in the heroic sense. It is about refusing to hand your financial life to a weaker version of yourself. Good systems assume inconsistency. That is why they work. Retirement contributions should happen before the money gets cozy in checking. Emergency fund transfers should be automatic. Debt paydowns should be scheduled. Investing should happen monthly, whether you feel wise or not. People do one sloppy December of BNPL purchases, auto-renewed subscriptions, and I deserve it spending, then spend the next 8 months cleaning up the mess. Not because they are stupid, because the system is built for exactly that kind of inconsistency. Environment beats intention all the time, so change the environment. Make saving the default. Make investing invisible. Make spending something that requires a conscious move, not a reflex. If your whole plan depends on future you being disciplined, then you do not have a plan. You have a wish. Rule 7. Treat your career like a concentrated position. This part often gets diluted into career advice, so let's keep it financial. Your career is not a motivational journey. It is a concentrated position in your own human capital. Most people are all in on one company, in one industry, with one aging skill stack, and they talk about that setup as if it were a safe bond. It isn't a bond. It is a concentrated equity position with no hedge. If your health weakens, your human capital marks down. If your skills stagnate, your pricing power decays. If your firm restructures, your income stream can disappear faster than your mortgage payment does. That is not self-improvement language. That is balance sheet reality. And here is the social observation people do not like hearing. Employers prefer workers who are financially trapped. High fixed costs, no liquidity, one source of income. That worker does not push back. That worker takes the extra hours, accepts the smaller bonus, and stays quiet during reorganizations because one missed paycheck would trigger a household crisis. That is not loyalty. That is dependence with a professional dress code. Time is your inventory. If you have only one serious buyer for that inventory, your boss, then your bargaining power is close to zero. The moment that buyer cuts volume, cuts price, or disappears, you find out how exposed you really were. A man in Atlanta spent 12 years becoming indispensable to one company, or so he thought. Then private equity bought the firm, cut the division, and his title vanished in 1 quarter. What saved him was not loyalty. It was the fact that he still had marketable skills and people outside the company willing to take his call. So treat your career like risk management, not self-expression. If you have not upgraded your human capital in 3 years, you are holding a depreciating asset and pretending it is stable. Protect your health, refresh your skills, build outside options, because the harder you are to replace, the harder you are to corner. Now we can say the quiet part plainly. Most people do not fail financially because they never learned how to invest. They fail because they built an unprotected life and then tried to fix that weakness with returns. They tried to outrun a weak monthly setup with optimism. They tried to offset ugly debt with small investments. They tried to replace cash reserves with confidence. They tried to cover insurance gaps with luck. They tried to solve a liability problem with asset growth. That almost never works. Because the main predator in most financial lives is not the stock market, it is the extraction layer. The easy leverage, the respectable payments, the creeping fixed costs, the fees you barely notice, the tax mistakes, the bad terms, the behavioral leaks, the normal-looking decisions that quietly put first claim on your future work. Once you see that, the whole game changes. You stop being hypnotized by upside. You stop mistaking complexity for intelligence. You stop asking only how to grow money and start asking how to stop money from leaking out before it ever gets the chance to compound. That is the pivot. Defense is not separate from wealth building. It is the part that makes wealth building real. So what does financial adulthood actually look like? It looks like someone who can lose a bonus without losing the house. Someone who can leave a bad job without immediate panic. Someone who reads the deductible, the APR, and the fee sheet before signing. Someone who knows that I can afford the payment is a much weaker standard than this improves my balance sheet. It looks like someone who does not finance status symbols with future labor. Someone who does not confuse high income with safety. Someone who understands that boring, low-cost systems usually beat expensive, flattering systems over long stretches of time. And notice how unglamorous that is. No illusion, no performance, just a structure that is harder to exploit. A life where one bad quarter does not take the house, raid the retirement account, or force you to kneel in front of a lender asking for mercy. That is what real security feels like, not a luxury weekend, not a new badge of class membership. Real security is the quiet knowledge that a bad season cannot immediately turn your fear into somebody else's revenue. So here is the line I want to leave you with. The most dangerous financial life is the respectable trap. A life where the LinkedIn profile looks strong, the neighbors are impressed, the lawn is cut, the car is clean, and everything appears fully adult on the outside, while the inside is running on a just-in-time cash system that can trigger systemic failure from one delayed paycheck or one ugly surprise. That is what financial self-defense is for, not paranoia, not cheapness, not fear, structure. Protect cash flow, remove predatory debt, build cash reserves, ensure real catastrophe, study fees, taxes, and terms. Never trust your future self with money. Treat human capital like an asset that can depreciate or be trapped. Do that long enough and something changes. You stop needing luck just to stay afloat. You stop confusing motion with progress. You stop donating years of labor to interest, fees, bad terms, and your own unmanaged weaknesses. Then, and only then, upside begins to matter. Because the first win in money is not getting rich. The first win is becoming hard to exploit. And in an economy built to monetize distraction, imitation, insecurity, and weakness, structure is the only thing that stops you from being such an easy customer.